I recall that day as vividly as the binary moons of my native planet, the artificial illumination within the grand hall projecting elongated shadows across the burnished floors. The subtle drone of the environmental control systems, usually imperceptible, seems somehow amplified, perhaps more ominous, or perhaps my memory embellishes it, given what transpired. Pardon me, I must introduce myself. I am Zix Tal, formerly a junior diplomatic officer of the Galactic Council, currently serving as chief historian, charged with documenting the occurrences that redefined our comprehension of humanity. The younger races frequently inquire why we regard humans with such meticulous deference. This record shall elucidate everything. The council chamber on that particular day teemed with representatives from over 300 species, the air recyclers struggling to manage the diverse atmospheric demands of so many lifeforms. Dense tendrils of artificial mist snaked along the floor, conveying specific gas mixtures to designated areas where diverse species required their unique respiratory compounds. I was stationed near the human delegation section, monitoring atmospheric parameters as was my duty. The humans sat placidly in their allotted area, their countenances exhibiting that unsettlingly neutral expression they had perfected. Ambassador Alexandra Cain occupied the front row, her silver hair drawn back in a severe style that mirrored her equally severe demeanor. In retrospect, I should have noted their stillness. Humans are typically such animated beings, constantly shifting, gesturing, or engaging in those minute movements they term fidgeting. Yet on that day, they sat like statues hewn from stone. High Counselor Pryo, with his characteristic insensitivity, droned on about trade regulations in the outer rim. His quartet of eyes blinked in their asynchronous pattern, while his secondary breathing sacs expanded and contracted with self-importance. The Vexer delegation, seated opposite the humans, cast what they believed to be surreptitious glances at Ambassador Cain, their neck frills undulating with barely suppressed amusement. I remember rechecking the atmospheric readings for the human sector for the third time that hour, not due to any anomaly, but because the tension permeating their area was so palpable I could have sworn there was an atmospheric imbalance. The readings, of course, were flawless. The tension was entirely attributable to the impending vote. The resolution under consideration concerned the recent annihilation of a human colony ship, the Stellar Dawn. The Vexer asserted it was a regrettable mishap precipitated by the humans' own inferior technology. We had all scrutinized the evidence that intimated otherwise, but most species were disposed to accept the Vexer explanation. After all, humans were still relatively nascent members of the galactic community, their vessels were likely not as sophisticated as they claimed. I observed Ambassador Cain's hand constricting tightly on her datapad when High Counselor Pryo finally addressed the incident, characterizing it as a lamentable, yet ultimately unavoidable, accident. Her knuckles blanched, but her countenance remained perfectly composed. That control, that patience, we would later ascertain had been honed over millennia of human diplomacy, and we were about to witness the moment it finally fractured. The various species in the chamber murmured amongst themselves, their translators generating a cacophony of overlapping languages. The MX Troll delegation's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with skepticism. The Hino representatives clicked their mandibles in what I recognized as their expression of dismissal. Even my own species representative, Council Member Rick Snan, fluttered his sensory membranes in a manner that unequivocally indicated he had already resolved to vote against the human petition for an independent inquiry. At that juncture, observing the casual dismissal of what we would later learn was a deliberate act of aggression against human civilians, I experienced something unprecedented in my diplomatic tenure: shame. Not for the humans, as many of my colleagues expressed, but for ourselves. We fancied ourselves so astute, so politically savvy. We were about to discover just how misguided we were. In retrospect, perusing our historical archives, the pattern appears so glaringly evident. Humanity joined the Galactic Council 147 cycles ago. They arrived with open arms, eager to disseminate their knowledge and resources. Their initial first contact protocols were exemplary, exhibiting a degree of cultural sensitivity that should have alerted us to their far greater sophistication than they outwardly projected. Allow me to impart some context that the younger generations might not know. When humans initially joined the Council, they freely shared their medical expertise. Their comprehension of genetic repair and trauma treatment was remarkable. The Vexer, in particular, benefited from human expertise in treating radiation damage. Yet, when humans requested access to Vexor's shielding technology in exchange, the Vexor claimed their technology was too advanced for human comprehension. Then there was the notorious agricultural exchange program. Humans introduced their drought-resistant crops to 17 struggling colonies across the Outer Rim. These plants flourished in conditions that had previously been deemed too inhospitable for cultivation. The Hino Consortium, which had long profited from its monopoly on food distribution to these colonies, retaliated by introducing parasites specifically engineered to decimate human crops. When humanity presented evidence of this sabotage to the Council, High Counselor Pryo dismissed it as natural crop failure due to human inexperience with alien environments. I particularly recall the MX Troll incident. Humanity's warning regarding an approaching solar flare that would have devastated the MX Troll home system saved billions of lives. The MX Troll pledged to share their faster-than-light communication technology in gratitude. Yet, after their population was safely evacuated, they asserted their technology was a sacred gift from their ancestors and could not be shared with outsiders. Time and again, humanity extended their hand in friendship, only to be met with betrayal or dismissal. Yet, they remained patient, so patient that we mistook their restraint for weakness. The Vexor even had a saying, "How do you spot a human diplomat? They are the ones still smiling after you steal their credits." Ambassador Cain's predecessor, Ambassador Samuel Rivera, once delivered a speech that should have served as a warning. His words resonate in my memory: "We come seeking friendship, but do not mistake our desire for peace as an inability to wage war." Unfortunately, most council members were too preoccupied with mocking his accent to discern the steel beneath his words. The humans even endeavored to warn us in their own way. They freely disseminated their entertainment media, including historical documents they termed movies and books about their previous conflicts. We presumed these were products of an overactive imagination. How naive we were to dismiss tales of their world wars as mere fiction. The humans had already fought battles that would have annihilated lesser species, and they emerged stronger each time. Their frustration became increasingly palpable in the cycles leading up to the breaking point, as we now term it. Their diplomatic corps, once renowned for hosting elaborate cultural exchange events, became more reserved. Their representatives spoke less frequently at council meetings, though they continued to diligently document every slight and broken promise. I recall overhearing a conversation between two human diplomats in what they presumed was an empty corridor. The younger one inquired, "How long must we endure this?" The elder replied, "We give them every chance to choose wisdom over folly." The younger one responded with words that should have chilled us all: "Their wisdom is taking an awfully long time to kick in." Even their body language shifted, though few of us were adept enough in human behavioral patterns to notice. Ambassador Cain's habit of drumming her fingers on her datapad during council sessions ceased entirely. The human security personnel, who had always been affable with other species guards, became politely distant. Their cultural attaches, once eager to arrange exchange programs, began declining invitations to social events. In my capacity as a junior diplomatic officer, I had access to routine scan data of the human quarter of the station. Their living areas, once adorned with art and plants from dozens of worlds, gradually became more austere. Training activities in their exercise facilities increased by 300%. Yet, we remained oblivious to these warning signs. Perhaps most telling was their response to the trade sanctions the Council imposed after humans refused to share their newly developed quantum computing technology. The Vexor representative mockingly suggested humans were too primitive to comprehend fair trade. Ambassador Cain simply smiled and stated, "Your assessment of our capabilities continues to be interesting." That smile. I see it in my nightmares sometimes, not because it was menacing, but because of its resemblance to the expression she wore on the day everything changed. We had so many opportunities to alter course, to treat humanity with the respect they merited. Instead, we continued to push, continued to take, continued to mock. The humans have a saying, "the straw that broke the camel's back." When I initially heard it, I did not comprehend how something as insignificant as a piece of dried grass could fracture a transportation animal's spine. Now, as I document these events, I understand perfectly. It was never about the final straw, it was about all the weight that preceded it. The destruction of the stellar dawn changed everything. The ship carried 3,427 human civilians, including 712 children. They were settlers, teachers, scientists, and dreamers en route to establish a new colony in what humans termed the Aurora sector. The Vexor claimed the humans had made a navigational error, causing their ship to disintegrate in the gravitational field of a gas giant. We all viewed the footage from the stellar dawn's final transmission. The ship's captain, Angela Martinez, remained composed even as warning sirens blared in the background. Her final words were not pleas for assistance, but instructions to other vessels to maintain a safe distance from the ship's predicted breakup zone. Even facing death, these humans considered the safety of others. What the Vexor did not know, what none of US knew, was that humans had developed quantum entanglement recording technology. Every second of data from the stellar dawn's systems was simultaneously logged at a secure facility on Earth. The humans had evidence of Vexor energy weapon signatures. They had recordings of the targeting systems locking onto their engines. They had everything. Yet, they still followed protocol. Ambassador Cain presented the evidence to the Council with remarkable composure. I stood at my customary post during that session, monitoring atmospheric conditions. When she played the enhanced recordings, the sounds of children singing in the ship's education pod were abruptly silenced by the weapon impact. The calm voices of the engineering team as they attempted to salvage their dying ship. The final lullaby a parent sang to their child in an escape pod moments before it was destroyed. Several council members had to excuse themselves during the presentation. I remember High Counselor Prio's secondary breathing sacs deflating in distress. Even the Vexor representatives appeared uneasy, their neck frills pressed flat against their scales. But discomfort did not equate to accountability. The human response surprised everyone. There were no threats, no demands for vengeance. Ambassador Cain submitted a formal request for an independent investigation, adhering to every procedural rule perfectly. She even included ancient council precedents supporting her petition. The humans demonstrated a mastery of our bureaucratic system that should have made us realize how thoroughly they had studied our weaknesses. When the Vexor Trade Minister, Renshaw, accused humans of fabricating the evidence, Ambassador Cain's response sent chills through my sensory membranes. She speaks, Cain said. Miss Martinez had a daughter who loved to sing. Her name was Sophia. She was 6 years old. Would you like to hear her final performance? The Vexor Trade Minister declined. The humans continued their diplomatic efforts for 47 standard days. They filed reports, they requested meetings, they followed every procedure, dotted every bureaucratic I, and filed every form. Their patience appeared inexhaustible. The council members began to relax, believing that humans would accept this loss as they had accepted so many other slights. I was present when Admiral James Morrison arrived at the station. He moved with the fluid grace all human military personnel seemed to possess, but there was something different about him. His uniform bore no weapons, yet he radiated danger. He spoke privately with Ambassador Cain in the human diplomatic offices. Our surveillance systems could not penetrate their security measures, but I saw them both exit 3 hours later. The ambassador's face bore that same neutral expression, but Admiral Morrison smiled, not the warm smile humans usually offered, but something predatory. The next day, humanity filed their final petition. The document was a masterpiece of diplomatic language, requesting one last time a formal investigation into the destruction of the stellar dawn. They requested an emergency council session to vote on the matter. The rules required the council to convene within 3 days of receiving such a petition. The council members treated it as a mere formality. Many did not even bother to review the evidence before the session. The Hino representative was overheard in the diplomatic lounge saying the humans needed to learn their place in the galactic order. The night before the emergency session, I noticed unusual activity in the human quarter. Their entire diplomatic staff worked through the night, transmitting data back to Earth. Security scans showed they were systematically deleting their local databases. Several council members received this information but dismissed it. The MX Troll ambassador laughed, suggesting the humans were throwing a tantrum. I wish I had understood then what I know now. The humans were not having a tantrum, they were clearing the battlefield. They knew precisely how the vote would go, and they had already decided what would follow. The patience of humanity had finally reached its limit, and we were about to learn why so many of their historical documents spoke of humans as both creators and destroyers. The emergency session began like any other council meeting. The representatives filed in, taking their assigned seats while environmental systems adjusted to their biological needs. But there were differences, subtle ones that most ignored. The human section was unusually empty. Only Ambassador Cain and 3 staff members were present. Admiral Morrison stood at parade rest near the entrance, his presence drawing curious glances. High Counselor Pryo then called the session to order with his usual pompous flourish. The lighting in the chamber dimmed slightly, focusing attention on the central speaking platform. The Vexer delegation spoke first. Trade Minister Rin Shaw delivering a lengthy speech about unfounded accusations and the importance of unity. His neck frills rippled with false sympathy as he described the Stellar Dawn tragedy as regrettable but natural. Then came the parade of species. Species after species rose to speak, each dismissing human concerns with increasingly patronizing language. The Hino representative suggested humans needed better pilot training. The MX Troll ambassador recommended humans stick to their own territory until they better understood space travel. Each statement was met with murmurs of agreement from the council chamber. Through it all, Ambassador Cain sat perfectly still, that same neutral expression on her face. Only her eyes moved, scanning the chamber, noting each speaker, each nod of agreement, each dismissive gesture. The datapad before her remained untouched. When the time came for the final vote, High Counselor Pryo didn't even bother with a full roll call. A quick electronic poll showed what everyone expected. The petition was denied. 312 species against, 1 in favor. The humans did not even have a single ally in the vote. That should have been the end. The humans should have accepted the decision with their usual patience. But Ambassador Alexandra Cain stood up. Protocol dictated that the session was over. No further discussion was permitted after a vote. But when Cain walked to the central platform, no one stopped her. Perhaps it was the way she moved, with absolute certainty. Perhaps it was the look in her eyes. Or perhaps, deep down, we all knew this moment was inevitable. She did not touch the podium controls. She did not activate the translation systems. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the chamber in perfect galactic standard, a language most species took decades to master. Friends, she let the word hang in the air. For 147 cycles, humanity has called you friends. We shared our medical knowledge. We offered our agricultural advances. We gave warning of natural disasters. We extended our hands in peace and cooperation. The chamber was absolutely silent. Even the environmental systems seemed to quiet in response. In return, you took our gifts and offered mockery. You sabotaged our crops. You broke your promises. You killed our children. Her voice never rose, never showed anger. Somehow, that made it worse. Ambassador Cain raised her hand, and a hologram appeared above the chamber. The faces of every person who died on the Stellar Dawn hung in the air. Men, women, children, all looking out at the council with frozen smiles from their identification photos. You believe us weak because we prefer peace. You mistake patience for cowardice, restraint for inability. You look at our history, shared freely with you all, and see only what you wish to see. She pressed a button on her wrist device. The hologram changed, showing Earth, but not the peaceful blue world we were familiar with. This Earth was scarred, burning, yet surviving. Images flashed, showing human conflicts through their history, not the sanitized versions they usually shared, but the raw footage of their wars. We did not become peaceful because we could not fight. We chose peace because we know war too well. Her words fell like stones in the silent chamber. You were not ready for this truth, so we waited. We gave you every chance to grow beyond your petty rivalries and shallow ambitions. Admiral Morrison stepped forward, handing her a small device. She held it up for all to see. A simple red button, straight from humanity's ancient war films.
The absurdity of such a dramatic prop struck me then.
Later, I would understand it was chosen deliberately, a reference we should have recognized from their shared media.
The vote you just held was not to decide our petition. It was your last chance to choose wisdom. You have chosen otherwise. She pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened.
Several council members actually laughed. Then, every screen in the chamber lit up with tactical displays. Hundreds of human warships, previously hidden by technology we had not known they possessed, appeared in strategic systems across the galaxy. They had been there all along, waiting.
Ambassador Cain's next words burned themselves into my memory. Humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council.
You have 24 hours to evacuate this station before we demonstrate exactly why we chose to be peaceful. The coordinates of your evacuation routes have been transmitted to your ships. For your own safety, do not deviate from them. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Trade Minister Rinshaw, Sophia Martinez loved to sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
Remember that. The chamber erupted into chaos.
Species that had been enemies for millennia suddenly found themselves crowding the same escape routes. Through it all, the humans calmly walked out, leaving us to face the consequences of our choices.
I remember Admiral Morrison's smile as he followed Ambassador Cain.
It was the same smile their ancient warriors wore in the historical footage we had dismissed as fiction. The smile of a predator finally unleashed. The evacuation of the Council station proceeded with surprising orderliness, thanks entirely to human planning. Their evacuation routes were precisely calculated to prevent bottlenecking and conflicts between species that could not share the same atmospheric conditions.
Even in this final act, they demonstrated both efficiency and consideration. I witnessed the first demonstration of human military power from the observation deck of a refugee transport. Exactly 24 hours after Ambassador Cain's warning, the human fleet decloaked around the Council station. Their ships were nothing like the simple vessels they had shown us before. These were sleek predators, their hulls decorated with what we would later learn were called shark mouths, a tradition dating back to their ancient aerial combat craft. Admiral Morrison commanded the operation from the HSS Retribution. The ship's name alone should have been another warning.
The humans had never before revealed their military vessel names to the Council.
Now we knew why. HSS Nemesis, HSS Righteous Fury, HSS Remember the Dawn. Each name a promise.
The Council station, the pride of galactic civilization for over 10,000 cycles, vanished in an eye blink of focused antimatter annihilation.
No debris remained.
The humans had not merely destroyed it, they had erased it from existence.
The message was clear. They could have done this at any time during the past century and a half.
But this was just the beginning.
Across the galaxy, human warships appeared in precise, coordinated strikes. They did not target civilian populations or infrastructure.
Their attacks focused on military installations, weapons research facilities, and specifically the shipyards and defense platforms of the Vexor. Trade Minister Rinshaw's personal estate on the Vexor homeworld received special attention. A single human ship descended through the atmosphere, broadcasting on all frequencies. The ship's external speakers played a simple melody, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, before reducing the estate to molecular ash. The rest of the planet remained untouched. The Hino attempted to retaliate, launching their dreaded bioweapon swarms. The human ships did not even attempt to evade. The swarms simply died on contact with their hull shielding. Humanity had spent a century studying every weapon we possessed and had developed countermeasures for them all. When the MX Troll deployed their sacred faster-than-light communication disruptors, hoping to break human coordination, they discovered the humans had never been relying on conventional FTL signals. Each human ship operated with perfect tactical synchronization through quantum entanglement systems far beyond anything we had imagined they possessed. Their ground forces were equally terrifying. When the Vexor attempted to hold civilian scientists hostage at a research facility, hoping to bargain, humanity responded by deploying what they called drop troopers. Soldiers in powered combat armor dropped from orbit, their armor absorbing impacts that would have liquefied any known species. They moved with devastating speed and precision,
neutralizing the hostage-takers without a single civilian casualty. I had the opportunity to witness one of these operations personally. I was part of a neutral medical team allowed to treat the wounded afterward. The drop troopers towered over us in their armor, yet they helped carry stretchers and comfort the injured. One of them, his armor still scorched from orbital entry, gently sang a lullaby to a frightened Vexor child while a medic treated her minor injuries. That contrast, perhaps more than anything, demonstrated humanity's true nature. They were capable of incredible violence, yet chose to be gentle. Their restraint was not weakness, but a conscious choice made by a species that had mastered both war and peace. The human campaign lasted exactly 7 standard days. In that time, they neutralized every major military installation of the species that had opposed them. Their targets were chosen with surgical precision, minimizing civilian casualties while completely dismantling our ability to make war. Some of their technological revelations were particularly humbling. The navigational error that supposedly destroyed the stellar dawn? Humans had mastered gravimetric field manipulation centuries ago. Their ships could dance through gas giant gravity wells without concern. The quantum computing technology they had refused to share? It was obsolete by their standards, a polite fiction maintained to avoid embarrassing us. On the 7th day, they sent a message to every world simultaneously. Admiral Morrison delivered it personally, his hologram appearing in every population center across known space. His words were simple: the rules have changed. Humanity will no longer tolerate aggression against innocent civilians of any species. We offer peace, as we always have, but it is now peace backed by absolute strength. To demonstrate their sincerity, they shared a small portion of their medical database, cures for diseases that had plagued various species for generations. Human ships appeared in systems struggling with natural disasters. They offered food to worlds suffering from famine. Even as their warships held position over our capitals, they continued to help. The Vexor leadership attempted one final act of defiance. They launched their entire reserve fleet in a desperate attack on Earth. The human response demonstrated why they had been so tolerant of our previous arrogance. They simply had nothing to fear from us. The Vexor fleet never got within a light year of the Sol system. Every ship disappeared into what humans later explained were localized spacetime inversions, a defensive technology they had developed but hoped never to use. When human ships rescued the crews of those same Vexor vessels from the time-displaced pockets of space, returning them unharmed to their homeworld, the last vestige of resistance crumbled. The message was clear. Humanity could have destroyed us at any time, but they had always chosen preservation over destruction. The sight of High Counselor Pryo signing the new Galactic Charter under the watchful eyes of human warships was a powerful symbol of change. His breathing bladders remained permanently deflated after that day, a physical manifestation of the humility our species had learned at great cost. As I compile this record, I am struck by the words Admiral Morrison shared during the signing ceremony: "We take no pleasure in this show of force." Each weapon we revealed represented a hope that we would never need to use it. Remember this moment, not as a triumph of strength over weakness, but as a lesson about understanding the true nature of those you call friends or enemies. 20 cycles have passed since the event we now call the Awakening. The galaxy has changed in ways none of us could have predicted, though perhaps we should have. Humanity, true to their word, did not seek dominion over other species. Instead, they helped us build something far more valuable: genuine cooperation. The new Galactic Charter, drafted in the wake of their demonstration of power, established principles that would have seemed impossible under the old order. Every species, regardless of technological advancement, now has an equal voice in the reformed council. But the true genius of the system lies in its accountability. Gone are the days of empty promises and diplomatic backstabbing. Humanity introduced what they call transparent governance, backed by their quantum monitoring networks. They didn't demand to control these systems, they taught us how to build and operate them ourselves. Trust, but verify, became the new foundation of galactic diplomacy. The Vexor, perhaps the most transformed by these events, now lead the galaxy in technological. Concerning exchange initiatives, their current representative is a youthful scientist who, as a child, survived the drop trooper extraction operation,
she still murmurs "Twinkle twinkle little star" during diplomatic meetings, a habit that has become a symbol of atonement. Trade Minister Rene now serves as an educator at a multi-species institution on his home planet. In the previous cycle, he released a personal narrative of the stellar dawn occurrence and its repercussions. The book concludes with a message to Sofia Martinez's family, a public expression of remorse that moved even the most callous diplomats to their species' equivalent of tears. My counselor, Prel, then retired to an agricultural world, where he aids in coordinating food distribution to developing colonies. The human suggested this role, understanding that genuine redemption arises through service to others.